When you click on the link for the Hispanic serving institutions, it is very clear that this is for Hispanics. But when it comes to the clause that you have to assume is for Black Americans because they just randomly threw in Tuskegee University, that page is filled with so much legalese jargon that it is impossible for the common man to understand what they're talking about. Section constitutes part of Section 4 of Act August 30th of 1890. Remainder of Section 4 is classified to Section 326 of this title. Act of August 30th of 1890, as amended, which is classified to the subchapter, is popularly known as the Agricultural College Act of 1890. And also as the Second Morale Act. Any provision of federal law regulating to colleges and universities eligible to receive funds under the Act of August 30th of 1890, 7 U.S.C. 321, including Tuskegee University, shall apply to Central State University, notwithstanding the designation under subsection A for fiscal years 2014 and 2015, Central State University shall not be able to receive formal funds under section 1444 or 1445 of the National Agricultural Research Extension and Teaching Policy Act of 1977. What are they talking about? Now, I would like to start out this video by taking a moment to read about 2 to 3 paragraphs from this article on The Atlantic titled "The Great Land Robbery: The Shameful Story of How 1 Million Black Farmers Have Been Ripped from Their Farms." It's going to be a little bit long-winded, but follow me because we're going somewhere with this. Major audits and investigations of the USDA have found that illegal pressures levied through its loan programs created massive transfers of wealth from Black to white farmers, especially in the period just after the 1950s. In 1965, the United States Commission on Civil Rights uncovered blatant and dramatic racial differences in the level of federal investment in farms. The commission found that in a sample of counties across the South, the FMHA provided much larger loans for small and medium-sized white-owned farms relative to net worth than it did for similarly sized Black-owned farms, evidence that the racial discrimination has served to accelerate the displacement and impoverishment of the Negro farmer. In Sunflower County, a man named Ted Keenan told investigators that in 1956, local banks had denied him loans after a bad crop because of his position with the NAACP, where he openly advocated for voting rights. The FMHA had denied him loans as well. Keenan described how Eugene Fiskerly, the leader of the White Citizens Council in Sunflower County, together with representatives of Senator James Eastland, a notorious white supremacist who maintained a large plantation there, had intimidated him into renouncing his affiliation with the NAACP and agreeing not to vote. Only then did Eastland's man call the local FMHA agent, prompting him to reconsider Keenan's loan. The landmark 2001 investigation by the Associated Press into extortion, exploitation, and theft directed against Black farmers uncovered more than 100 cases like Keenan's. In the 1950s and 60s, Norman Weatherby, a Holmes County Chevrolet dealer who enjoyed a local monopoly on trucks and heavy farm equipment, required Black farmers to put up land as collateral for loans on equipment. A close friend of his, William Strider, was the local FMHA agent. Black farmers in the area claimed that the two ran a racket. Strider would slow walk them on FMHA loans, which meant they would default on Weatherby's loan and lose their land to him. Strider and Weatherby were reportedly free to run this racket because Black farmers were shut out by local banks. Now, this article from beginning to end is about 48 minutes, and if you take the time to actually read this article, you'd be dumbfounded over the fact that what I just read to you was merely the tip of the iceberg. And to further highlight this point, I'd like to read one last sentence off this article before we move on. The telling factor, looking at it from the long view, is that at the time of World War I, there were 1 million Black farmers, and in 1992, there were 18,000. So now we come to the American Rescue Plan. And it shouldn't be of any real surprise that there is nothing in this plan that is specific or exclusive to assisting Black Americans, because Kamala Harris made it very clear that there wouldn't be when she was asked on specifics by the Black Chamber of Commerce, and she proceeded to reply with benign neglect.
Thank you so much, Ron, and Madam Vice President Kamala Harris. as president of Oakland African American Chamber of Commerce and also a business owner, my question is, how can we ensure the provisions outlined within the American Rescue Plan reach Black businesses, Black communities, and Black families?
Thank you, Kathy, and it's so good to see you. It is so good to see you. I will tell you, the president, and he and I have been spending a lot of time together before we got sworn in on January 20th and since. And I will tell you, he has such a deep commitment to equity. Really, he brings it up all the time. He challenges the team to make sure that we are keeping in mind that, there's a big difference between equality and equity, right? Which is that, everyone can get an equal amount, but if you don't start out in the same place, you don't end up in the same place. Equity suggests that we take into account that people start out in different places and we want everyone to have equal access to opportunity. So this is a very big principle as it relates to this issue and so many others in the way that the president thinks.
That was a very long-winded way of saying there is no way to ensure that the provisions outlined in the American Rescue Plan will reach Black businesses, Black communities, and Black families because
I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit Black people. No.
But now let's come back to the American Rescue Plan. And what we're going to do is scroll down to section 1006, Assistance and Support for Socially Disadvantaged Farmers, Ranchers, Forest Land Owners and Operators, and Groups. In addition to amounts otherwise available, there is appropriated to the Secretary of Agriculture for fiscal year 2021 out of any money in the Treasury not otherwise appropriated $1,010,000,000 to remain available until expended to carry out this section. Now, this section goes on to prove what I and many others, including Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., have been saying for decades now concerning how the United States government consistently makes it a point to prioritize other groups over Black Americans. So now let's dive into this bill and see what's going on. Clause C. Alaskan Native serving institutions and Native Hawaiian serving institutions eligible to receive grants under subsection A and B, respectively, of section 1419B of the National Agricultural Research, Extension, and Teaching Policy Act of 1977. Now we come to Clause D. Hispanic serving institutions eligible to receive grants under section 1455 of the National Agricultural Research, Extension, and Teaching Policy Act of 1977. Now, based off what I read to you at the beginning of this video, how is it possible that there is no section for African American or Black American serving institutions? Now, given the history of Black farmers in America, it is wildly disrespectful and beyond unacceptable for Black farmers to have been left out of this section of the American Rescue Plan. Now, for me personally, this isn't surprising that they left out Black farmers, but that doesn't make it any less disrespectful and unacceptable. Now, I already know what the naysayers of this video are going to say, and it's two things, and the first one is this. Why did you skip Clause A, which reads, colleges or universities eligible to receive funds under the Act of August 30th of 1890, commonly known as the Second Morrill Act, 7 U.S.C. 321, including Tuskegee University? Now, what you're led to assume is that this clause is for Black Americans because they just threw in Tuskegee University at the end of it. Every clause that I read to you has a link attached to it for the purpose of clarification regarding who this clause is applicable to. When you click on the link for the Hispanic serving institutions, it is very clear that this is for Hispanics. When you click on the link for Alaskan Natives and Native Hawaiian serving institutions, it is made very clear that this is for Alaskan Natives and Native Hawaiians. But when it comes to the clause that you have to assume is for Black Americans because they just randomly threw in Tuskegee University, that page is filled with so much legalese jargon that it is impossible for the common man to understand what they're talking about. section constitutes part of Section 4 of Act August 30th of 1890. Remainder of Section 4 is classified to Section 326 of this title. Act of August 30th of 1890, as amended, which is classified to the subchapter, is popularly known as the Agricultural College Act of 1890. And also as the Second Morale Act. Any provision of federal law regulating to colleges and universities eligible to receive funds under the Act of August 30th of 1890, 7 U.S.C. 321, including Tuskegee University, shall apply to Central State University, notwithstanding the designation under subsection A for fiscal years 2014 and 2015. Central State University shall not be able to receive formal funds under section 1444 or 1445 of the National Agricultural Research Extension and Teaching Policy Act of 1977. What are they talking about? This type of foolishness is only reserved for the descendants of American slavery. Everybody else gets clear-cut legislation. Meanwhile, you get a bunch of legalese jargon that you have to hire a lawyer for in order to understand it. And now the last point I want to bring up is the Justice for Black Farmers Act, because I know somebody's going to try and bring it up in defense of the Biden-Harris administration. Now, I'm not going to make this part long-winded. We're just going to get straight to the point. This is a bill that was introduced by Cory Booker and Elizabeth Warren late last year to address everything that I read off at the beginning of this video concerning the racist theft of land from black farmers. Now, on the surface, the Justice for Black Farmers Act sounds great. But once you make it a point to read the bill for yourself, it quickly turns into some BS. So now let's go into this bill. And what we're going to do is go to section 206, eligibility for assistance, subsection A, clause 1, titled eligible black individuals. Now, I'm not going to read this off because off the title alone, eligible black individuals, that's self-explanatory. And this section should begin and end here because that's what would make logical sense. I mean, after all, this is the Justice for Black Farmers Act, right? So then why is there a clause for socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers in this section? My God, black folks can't have nothing for themselves when it comes down to legislation and policy. It always has to be watered down, allowing every non-black so-called person of color into it. The term socially disadvantaged and or disadvantaged groups, all of which mean non-black people of color, appears in this bill a total of 35 times. Why? If this is supposed to be justice for black farmers, then why does every non-black person get to eat off of this plate? You see, benign neglect nonsense like this has been going on for too long now, and at this point it's time to demand some answers from these people. We need some answers from Cory Booker because, once again, this is wildly disrespectful towards the ancestors of the descendants of American slavery who had their land stolen from them. From the American Rescue Plan to the Justice for Black Farmers Act, you are seeing very clearly how this government consistently makes it a point to undermine legislation that they say is supposed to be helping black Americans, but clearly does the opposite. And not only that, it goes on to prioritize other groups over you. It is clear as day and right in front of your face. And if you voted for Biden and Harris and you made it this far in the video, but you still want to believe otherwise concerning those two, then there's truly no helping you at this point. You are thoroughly brainwashed, and you can expect bills like this to pass for the next 4 years that undermines black America. Meanwhile, everybody else that are benefiting from these bills will turn back and look at you and say, hey, we suffered under racism too. How come you guys can't do it? Because understand, when these bills pass that benefit everybody but you, at that point, everybody else is just playing defense and acting dumb like they don't know what's going on. Meanwhile, you're the only one that's still on offense trying to call foul. Now that ends it for part 1 of this video. Please make sure you tune in this Wednesday around 1:30 Los Angeles time, where I'll be going live to discuss part 2 of this topic, where I'll be going more in depth in the Native American section of the American Rescue Plan, where I'll be discussing the hundreds of millions of dollars that will be going to the Native American community. Yet when you have the audacity to say, what is there specifically in the American Rescue Plan for Black Americans, Black farmers, and Black families, you get looked at as if you said something crazy. And with all that being said, that wraps it up for today. So please make sure you hit that subscribe button, as well as the bell notification next to the subscribe button, so you can be notified whenever I release a new video. Also, all social media links will be pinned in the comment section below. Make sure you text tdhiphop to number 33222. That's tdhiphop to number 33222. That way you'll get a direct text notification whenever I release a new video, but it also serves as a protection plan for myself in case YouTube ever gives this channel the axe. I'll be able to send you a direct link to where you can find me next. And lastly, but certainly not least, for those of you who have been subscribers to this channel for quite some time now and have a love and appreciation for the work that I put in on this channel, the #1 way you can show your support to me is through Patreon. For only $3 a month, that will help put me in position to be able to take TD Hip Hop Media off of YouTube. Remember, the goal is not to grow big on YouTube, but to grow independent of YouTube. And until the next video, peace.